I sometimes get asked the question, how do you know when enough's enough? How do you know when it's time to move on when you've had challenges in something? And I tell people, if you have to ask the question, it's not time. You'll know when it's time. We have a number of ways of responding. We can avoid something because it's so painful, because we're blind to the upsides to it and blind to the pleasures of it. We can actually have a balanced perspective and then act because it's just time, reasonably. It's time to move on. Sometimes we complete a chapter and we're ready to go on. So how do you know when it's time to? Well, my advice is to go and balance out your perception and let your heart guide you. Because sometimes if you go in impulse, whatever you run away from, you keep running into. This was a Jungian and psychological idea. The person that you despise is a reflection of you, but you're too proud to admit what you see in them is inside you. So when you have perceptions of more drawbacks and benefits, and you despise or dislike or resist or resent some human being, ultimately they're teaching you about a part of yourself you're too proud to admit you have, but you feel ashamed of, but you have it inside. And you're not having much reflective awareness. So avoiding them will be futile because you'll run into a new form in one or many people, or you'll end up manifesting the expression of it yourself, because whatever you condemn, you breed, attract, or become. But if you go in there and balance out your question and don't have any negative perception or positive perception, because it works both sides of the poles of the magnet, if you go balance out the equation, you're not seeking or avoiding. You're not run by external circumstances. You're guided from within. When we live with a balanced perspective, an objective, neutral state of mind, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, and we are objective, as I said, and we have spontaneous action potentials in our medial prefrontal cortex, which guides us with self-governance into action that is spontaneously, that inspires us. Taking an action that inspires us is not avoiding something that we keep trying to avoid but keep running into. So my advice is, if you're trying to avoid something because you're so tired of it and it represents a predator to you, you're going to run into it again. Neutralize the predator. See both sides simultaneously, as Wilhelm Wundt, the psychologist, said, and you will liberate yourself from the indecisiveness and act spontaneously on something you'd love to do. If you fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, it's not likely to fill up with low priority distractions that don't, where you're having to make decisions. The word decide means to bring death to an option. So when you decide, if you have this idea that it's a negative more than a positive, you're going to run away from it, but you're going to keep running into it. Wiser to go and balance the equation, liberate yourself from that decision, and act spontaneously on something you love, because when you fill your day that way, it doesn't fill up with the things that you don't love.